Hey everyone, welcome back to Mental Wealth Reads. I'm gonna start back in to Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. We're gonna be reading chapter 13 today, which is called If You Don't Have Money, Use OPM. Business is quite simple. It is other people's money, said Alexander Dumas the Younger in his play The Question of Money. Yes, it's that simple. Use OPM, or other people's money. That's the way to acquire great wealth. Benjamin Franklin did it, William Nickerson did it, Conrad Hilton did it, Henry J. Kaiser did it, Colonel Sanders did it, and Ray Kroc did it. And if you are wealthy, the chances are you did it too. Now, if you are not wealthy, learn to read what is unwritten. In fact, rich or poor, read what is unwritten into every platitude, axiom, or self-motivator. The basic unwritten premise in Use OPM is that you will operate on the highest ethical standards of integrity, honor, honesty, loyalty, consent, and the golden rule, and apply these in your business relationships. The dishonest man is not entitled to credit. In the self-motivator, Use OPM implies repayment in full, as agreed with an advantageous consideration or profit to those whose money is used. Credit and the use of OPM are one and the same thing. It is a lack of satisfactory credit system within a country that keeps backward nations back. Whereas it is the credit system as practiced in the United States that has developed such great wealth and progress in this nation. It has been singularly American. Now, the person, corporation, or nation that does not have credit or does not use it for expansion and progress, if they do have it, is missing an important number in the combination for success. Therefore, take the advice of a wise and successful businessman like Benjamin Franklin. Advice to a young tradesman, written in 1748 by Franklin, discusses the use of OPM as follows. Remember that money is of the prolific generating nature. Money can beget money, and its offspring can beget more, and so on. Also, Franklin said, remember that 6 pounds a year is but a groat a day. For this little sum, which may be daily wasted either in time or expense unperceived, a man of credit may, on his own security, have the constant possession and use of 100 pounds. Now, this statement of Franklin's is a symbol of an idea. His advice is as good today as when it was written. You can start with a few cents and have constant possession of $500 by employing it. Or you can expand the idea and have constant possession of millions of dollars. This is what Conrad Hilton does. He is a man of credit. The Hilton Hotels Corporation obtained credit of millions of dollars to build luxurious motels for air travelers at large airports. The corporation's collateral? Mostly Hilton's name for honest dealing. Honesty is one thing for which a satisfactory substitute has never been found. It is something which reaches deeper in a human being than most traits of personality. Honesty, or the lack of it, writes itself indelibly into every word one speaks, into every thought and deed, and often reflects itself in one's face so that the most casual observer can sense the quality of sincerity immediately. The dishonest person, on the other hand, may announce his weakness in the very tone of his voice, the expression on his face, in the nature and trend of his conversations, or in the type of service he renders. So while this chapter might seem to be one about the use of other people's money, it also has strong overtones about character in it. Honesty and reputation, credit and success in business are all intermixed. The man who has the first of them all is well on his way to gaining the other three. Make investments with OPM. William Nickerson was another man of credit and reputation who found money can beget money and its offspring can beget more. He tells us about it in his book. The title tells what he did. The book tells how he did it. Nickerson's book is aimed specifically at how to make money with OPM in your spare time in the real estate field. But almost everything he has to say also applies to you in your efforts to acquire wealth by making investments with OPM. How I Turned 1,000 into 3 million in My Spare Time is the title of the book. Show me a millionaire, he says, and I will show you almost invariably a heavy borrower. To back up his statement, he points to wealthy men such as Henry Kaiser, Henry Ford, and Walt Disney. And we will point to Charlie Simmons, who, with bank credit, developed a $40 million business in 10 years. But before we do, let's talk about the people who help men like Conrad Hilton, William Nickerson, and Charlie Simmons by loaning them the money they need. Your banker is your friend. Banks are in business to loan money. The more they loan to honest men, the more money they make for themselves. Commercial banks loan money primarily for business purposes. Thus, loans for luxuries are not encouraged. Your banker is an expert, and more important, he is your friend. He wants to help you, for he is one of the people eager to see you succeed. If the banker knows his business, listen to what he has to say. For a person with common sense never underestimates the power of a borrowed dollar or the advice of an expert. It was the use of OPM and a successful plan, plus the PMA success principles of initiative, courage, and common sense that resulted in an average American boy named Charlie Simmons becoming wealthy. Like some Texans, Charlie Simmons of Dallas is a millionaire. In fact, like some other Texans, he is a multimillionaire. Yet at the age of 19, he was no better off financially than most teenage boys, except that he had worked and saved some money. One of the officers in the bank, where Charlie regularly deposited his savings each Saturday, took an interest in him. For the banker felt, now here's a boy of character and ability, and he knows the value of money. So when Charlie decided to go in business for himself, buying and selling cotton, the banker gave him credit. And this was the first experience Charlie Simmons had in the use of OPM. As you will see it was not the last. He learned then and has seen it confirmed since. Your banker is your friend. About a year and a half after he became a cotton broker, the young man became a horse and mule trader. It was then that he learned much about human nature. And his understanding of people, in addition to his knowledge of money, soon developed in Charlie Simmons a very sound philosophy of a brand commonly observed in persons who are or will be successful. Charlie learned this philosophy at an early age. He has never lost it. Today, he still maintains it. This brand of philosophy is known as common sense. After he had operated a few years as a horse and mule trader, two men came to Charlie and asked him to go to work for them. These two men had developed a reputation for themselves as being outstandingly successful in the sale of insurance. They had come to Charlie because they had learned a lesson from defeat. Here's how it happened. It seemed that after these two salesmen had successfully sold life insurance over a period of many years, they were motivated to form a company of their own. They were good salesmen, all right, but they were poor business administrators. In fact, they were such good salesmen that they sold their company out of business. Now, it is not uncommon for salesmen to assume that financial success in a business is contingent only on sales, but this is a false premise. A poor administration can lose money as fast or faster than a good sales management and sales force can bring it in. Their trouble was that neither of these men was as good an administrator. But they learned their lesson the hard way. On the day they went to see Charlie, one of the salesmen told their story of defeat and said, "Since our company went broke, we have paid off our losses from the commissions we have since made selling insurance. We also had to pay for our living. It has taken a mighty long time, but we have done it. We know we are good salesmen, and we also know now that we should keep to our own specialty, which is selling." He hesitated, looked into the eyes of the young man, and continued, "Charlie, you have your feet on the ground. You have good common horse sense, and we need you. Together we can succeed." And they did. A plan and OPM developed a $40 million volume. A few years later, Charlie Simmons bought all of the shares of the company he and the two men had formed. How did he get the money? He used OPM plus what he had saved. Where did he get the large amount of money that he needed? He borrowed it from a bank, of course. Remember, he had learned early that his banker was his friend. And then in the year that his company had produced an annual premium volume of almost $400,000, the insurance executive finally found the success formula for rapid expansion that he had longed for. He is ready. It was this formula plus OPM that developed a $40 million premium volume in a single year. Simmons had seen that an insurance company in Chicago had successfully developed a sales plan through leads. Now, for many years, sales managers had used what is termed the lead system to promote a new business. And with sufficient good leads, salesmen often earned exceedingly large incomes. Inquiries from individuals who indicate an interest are called leads. These are generally obtained from some form of promotional advertising program. Perhaps you know from experience that with human nature being what it is, many salesmen are timid or afraid to try and sell persons whom they don't know or with whom they have had no previous personal contact or communication. Because of this fear, they waste a lot of time that could be used in selling prospects. But even an ordinary salesman will be motivated to call on as many prospects as he has leads, for he knows that many sales can be made even though he himself may have little sales training or experience, when he is furnished good leads. And besides, he has an address and a specific person to see there. He believes the prospect is somewhat interested before he interviews him. Therefore, he is not as fearful as he would be if he were forced to try to sell a person without any preconditioning whatsoever. Some companies build their entire sales program on such leads, and advertising is used to obtain them. But advertising costs money. Charlie Simmons knew where to go to get the money when he had a good bankable idea: the Republic National Bank of Dallas, for it is well known in Texas that this bank helped build Texas. And it is in the business to lend money to men of integrity like Charlie Simmons who have a plan and know how to work it. Now, while it is true that some bankers won't take the time to learn their client's business, Orrin Kite and other officers of the Republic National do. Charlie explained his plan to them, and as a result, he was able to employ unlimited credit to build his insurance business through the lead system. You see, it was because of the American credit system that Charlie Simmons was able to build the Reserve Life Insurance Company. And under such a system, he was able to develop a premium volume from $400,000 to over $40 million within the short span of 10 years. Again, because he used OPM in his investments, he is able to invest in and own controlling interests in hotels, office building, manufacturing plants, and other enterprises. But you don't need to go to Texas to use OPM. W. Clement Stone bought an insurance company with $1,600,000 in assets using the seller's own money. He went to Baltimore. How W. Clement Stone bought $1,600,000 company with the seller's own money. This is how he describes the purchase. It was the year end, and I was engaging in study, thinking, and planning time. I determined that my major objective for the following year would be to own an insurance company that was licensed to operate in several states. I set a deadline as to when this was to be accomplished, December 31st of the next year. Now, I knew what I wanted, and a date was set for its achievement, but I don't know how I could get it. This wasn't really important, for I believed that I could find a way. Therefore, I thought, look for a company that would fulfill my requirements. 1, that it have a charter to sell accident and health insurance, and 2, that it be licensed to operate in nearly all the states. I didn't need established business, just a vehicle. Of course, there was a problem of money, but I could face that problem when it arose. Even then, it occurred to me that I was a salesman by vocation, and therefore I could, if it should become necessary, work out a 3-way deal: a contract to buy the company, reinsure the entire business with some large company, and thus own everything but the insurance in force. These other insurance companies were willing to pay a good price for established business. I didn't need established business. I had the experience and ability to build an accident and health business. Sorry, my phone was listening in on that one. I didn't need established business. I had the experience and ability to build an accident and health business as long as I had the vehicle. I had already proved this by building a national insurance sales organization. And then I made the next step. I asked for divine guidance and help. While analyzing the immediate problems with which I might be faced, it occurred to me that I should let the world know what I wanted, and the world would help me. Now, this conclusion was not in conflict with the principles laid down by Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, wherein he states that you keep your definite objectives a secret except to members of your Mastermind alliance. When I found the company that I wished to buy, I would of course follow his suggestion and keep the negotiations a secret from the world until I closed the deal. So I let the world know what I wanted. Every time I met a person in the industry who might give me information, I told him what I was looking for. Joe Gibson of Excess Insurance was such a person. I had met him on just one occasion. The new year was started with enthusiasm as I had a big objective and I set out to reach it. 1 month passed. 2, 6 months passed. At least 10 months had gone by, and although I had checked into many possibilities, none filled my 2 basic requirements. Then one Saturday in the month of October, when I was seated at my desk with my papers pushed back, engaged in study, planning, thinking time, I checked off the list of my objectives for the year. All had been achieved but one, the important one. Just 2 months ago, I said to myself, there is a way. While I don't know what it is, I know I'll find it. For it never occurred to me that my aim could not be reached or that it wouldn't be reached within the timeline specified. There's always a way, I said to myself. Again, as on similar occasions, I asked for divine guidance for help. Now 2 days later, something unexpected happened. I was again seated at my desk. This time I was busy dictating. The telephone rang, a disturbing note at my elbow. I picked up the receiver and a voice said, "Hello, Clem. This is Joe Gibson." Our conversation was short, and I will never forget it. Joe talked rapidly. "I thought you would be interested in knowing that the Commercial Credit Company of Baltimore will probably liquidate the Pennsylvania Casualty Company because of its tremendous losses. Of course, you know Commercial Credit owns Pennsylvania Casualty. There will be a meeting of the Board of Directors next Thursday in Baltimore. All the Pennsylvania Casualty Company's business is already being reinsured by 2 other insurance companies owned by Commercial Credit. The name of the Executive Vice President of Commercial Credit is E.H. Warheim." I thanked Joe Gibson warmly, asked him 1 or 2 more questions, and then hung up the phone. After a few minutes of thought, it flashed into my mind that if I could conceive a plan whereby Commercial Credit Company would accomplish its objectives more quickly and with greater certainty than under its proposed plan, it shouldn't be difficult to persuade the directors to accept such a plan. I didn't know Mr. Warheim, and therefore was hesitant to call him, but I felt that speed was of the essence. And then 2 self-motivators forced me to act. Where there is nothing to lose by trying and everything to gain by success, if successful, by all means try. Do it now. And without a second's further hesitation, I picked up the phone and placed a long-distance call to E.H. Warheim in Baltimore. "Mr. Warheim," I began with a smile in my voice, "I have some good news for you." And then I introduced myself and explained that I had heard of the possible action to be taken regarding Pennsylvania Casualty Company, and that I thought I would be in a position to help them reach their objectives more quickly. Then and there, I made an appointment to see Mr. Warheim and his associates the following day at 2 p.m. in Baltimore. At 2 p.m. the next day, W. Russell Arrington, my attorney, and I met with Mr. Warheim and his associates. Pennsylvania Casualty Company fulfilled my needs. It had a charter permitting it to operate in 35 states. It had no insurance in force, and the business had already been reinsured by other companies. By making the sale, Commercial Credit Company accomplished its objectives quickly and with certainty. In addition, they received $25,000 from me for the charter. Now, the company had $1,600,000 in liquid assets, negotiable securities, and cash. How did I get the $1,600,000? I used OPM. It happened this way. "What about the $1,600,000 in assets?" Mr. Warheim asked. I was ready for the question and immediately responded. "Commercial Credit Company is in the business of lending money. I will just borrow $1,600,000 from you." We all laughed, and then I continued. "You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. For everything I own will be behind the loan, including the $1,600,000 company that I am now buying. Besides, you are in the business of lending money, and what better security could you have than the pledge of the company you are selling me? In addition, you will receive interest on the loan. What is most important to you is that this way you will solve your problem swiftly and with certainty." When I hesitated, Mr. Warheim asked another very important question. "How are you going to repay the loan?" And I was ready for that question too. My response was, "I will repay the entire loan in 60 days. You see, I don't need more than $500,000 to operate an accident and health company in the 35 states in which Pennsylvania Casualty Company is licensed. As the company will be wholly owned by me, all I need to do is reduce the capital and surplus of the Pennsylvania Casualty Company from $1,600,000 to $500,000, which I can then apply to my loan with you. You and I know that a businessman is faced with the matter of income taxes on any transaction involving income or expenditures. but no income tax payments will be required on this transaction for the simple reason that the Pennsylvania Casualty Company has not made profits, and no part of the money I receive when I reduce the capital will therefore be from profits. And then another question was asked me. What about your plans to repay the balance of the $500,000? And I was prepared to answer and said, this should be easy. The Pennsylvania Casualty Company has assets consisting of only cash, government bonds, and high-grade securities. I can borrow the $500,000 from the banks with which I have been doing business by pledging my interest in Pennsylvania Casualty Company and other assets as additional security to the back of the loan. When Mr. Arrington and I left the office of Commercial Credit Company at 5 p.m., the deal was closed. Now, this experience is related in detail here to illustrate the steps one takes to achieve his aims through the use of OPM. If you will refer to Chapter 11 entitled, Is There a Shortcut to Riches?, you will see how the principles mentioned here were applied here. While this story indicates how the use of OPM can help a person, credit can sometimes be harmful. So far, we have been talking about the benefits of the use of credit. We have been talking about the practice of borrowing money for the purpose of making money. This is capitalism. This is good. But that which is good can be harmful to a person with negative mental attitude. Credit is no exception. And credit may make a person who has been honest become dishonest. The abuse of credit is one of the main sources of worry, frustration, unhappiness, and dishonesty. Now we are talking about credit being given voluntarily by a creditor. He gives credit to a person who he thinks has the quality of being worthy, on whose truthfulness he can rely. The one who betrays such a trust is dishonest. Such a person is the one who will borrow money or purchase merchandise without the intent to make the payments agreed upon or to pay the loan in full. Likewise, the honest person can become dishonest when he neglects to repay the loans he makes or pay for the merchandise he buys, even though circumstances may prevent him from making a payment on the due date. For the man under the influence of PMA, the PMA side of his talisman will have the courage to face the truth. He will have the courage to notify his creditors as far in advance as possible when circumstances prevent him from making a payment. And then he will work out some satisfactory arrangement by mutual consent with his creditor. Above everything else, he will sacrifice until his obligation is finally fully paid. The honest man with common sense does not abuse credit privileges. The honest man who lacks common sense will borrow or purchase on credit indiscriminately. And then, because he sees no way to pay his creditors, the anime influence of his talisman exerts such a terrific force on him that he may become honest. He may feel his situation is hopeless and he can do nothing about it. He realizes that he won't be thrown into jail for owing borrowed money. Although he thinks he is not going to be punished, in reality his worries, fears, and frustrations are a very real punishment. And he remains dishonest until he comes under the strong influences of PMA side of his talisman. Influences strong enough to cause him to clear his obligations in full. The abuse of credit privileges has literally brought on physical, mental, and moral illness. Remember necessity, NMA, and crime in Chapter 3 entitled Clear the Cobwebs from Your Thinking. As a very young salesman in the early part of 1928, W. Clement Stone called on an officer at the Continental Illinois National Bank and Trust Company in Chicago. The banker was talking to a customer or friend. While the young salesman was waiting, he overheard him say, "The market just can't keep going up forever. I'm selling my shares." Some of the keenest investors in the country lost fortunes when the stock market crashed the following year, all because they lacked the knowledge of cycles, or, if they had the knowledge, they, unlike the banker, failed to act. Tens of thousands of individuals engaging in all forms of business enterprises, including farming, lost their wealth, even though they were honest, prudent persons. Their wealth was acquired through OPM. As their securities increased in value, they borrowed more money to purchase more securities, farmland, or other assets. When the market value of their securities fell, they were unable to pay when the banks were forced to call in their loans. Cycles repeat with regularity. So, in the first half of the 1970s, thousands of honest, prudent persons again lost their wealth because they didn't clear their loans in time by selling a portion of their securities, or didn't refrain from going further into debt to make additional purchases. When you use OPM, be certain to calculate how you can and will pay the individual or institution that loaned you the money. Important, if you have lost a portion or all of your wealth, remember that cycles repeat. Don't hesitate to start over again at the proper time. Many wealthy persons today lost fortunes previously, but because they didn't lose their PMA, they had the courage to learn from their experiences and subsequently acquired even greater wealth. If you would like to learn more about cycles, refer to Cycles, the Mysterious Force That Triggers Events by Edward R. Dewey and Og Mandino. You may find it exceedingly profitable. You can keep abreast of the theories and experiments on cycles by reading Cycles magazine, available online at http://cyclesmagazine.org. In business, there are very few numbers necessary in the combination to success, but if one or more of the numbers are missing, you will fail until you find the missing numbers. The use of the other people's money has been the means whereby honest men who were poor became rich. Money or credit is an important number in the combination to business success. The missing number. A young sales manager whose yearly earnings are in excess of $35,000 wrote, "I have a feeling, the type of feeling one would have if he were standing in front of a safe which held all the wealth, happiness, and success in the world, and he had all the numbers to the combination, except one. Just one number. If he had it, he could open the door." Often the difference between poverty and wealth lies in the employment of all the principles in a formula but one. Just that one missing number makes a difference. This can be illustrated in the experience of another man who had been successful in selling cosmetics for a manufacturer before he went into business for himself. In his own business, Leonard Lavin, like any man who starts from the bottom, was faced with problems. As you will see later, that was good. It was good because he had to study, think, plan, and work hard before he found a solution to each problem. Bernice, his wife, and he formed a perfect mastermind alliance, and they worked together in perfect harmony. They manufactured one cosmetic item and acted as distributors for other companies. But they lacked working capital, so they were forced to do the work themselves. As their business grew, Bernice became an expert in office management and purchasing and an excellent administrator. Leonard became a successful sales manager and efficient production manager. And when the business grew, they were wise enough to employ the services of a lawyer with good common sense, the kind that gets things done. And they also benefited from the service of an expert in accounting and taxes. The way to make a fortune is to manufacture or sell a product or service, preferably a necessity at a low cost that repeats. They did both. Every dollar that could be spared was plowed back into the business. Necessity motivated them to study, think, and plan. Make $1, do the part of many. Obtain maximum results from every working hour. Eliminate waste. Month by month, their sales moved forward as Leonard aggressively sought to break each previous sales record. He became known in the industry as a man who knew his business. To many, he became known as a man who learned to go the extra mile. Going the extra mile in 2 instances completely changed the course of his career for the better. In the one instance, his banker introduced him to 3 of the bank's clients who had made an investment in another cosmetic company. They needed expert advice from someone with good common sense, and Leonard took the time to help them. Leonard went the extra mile in doing a good turn for a buyer in a drugstore in Los Angeles. And then one day, the buyer showed his appreciation by confidentially informing Leonard that the firm manufacturing VO5, a quality hairdressing, might be for sale. Leonard got excited, for here was a 15-year-old company with a quality product that had leveled off. He knew from his cosmetic experience and from the study of cycles and trends that all this company needed was a new life, new blood, and new activity. He acted on the self-starter do it now. In fact, every evening he was in conference with the owner. Now, ordinarily in a transaction of this type where the buyer and seller don't know each other, it takes weeks and sometimes months to negotiate before there is a meeting of the minds. A pleasing personality and good common sense on the part of the buyer or seller often eliminate unnecessary delays. Because of Leonard's pleasing personality and his good common sense, the owner agreed to sell the company for $400,000 that same night. Now, it is true that Leonard had been doing well, but it was also true that every dollar he could spare was being plowed back into his business. Where could he get $400,000? In his hotel room that night, he realized that he had all of the combinations to real wealth but one, just one, which was money. The next morning, as he awakened, he had a flash of inspiration. Again, he reacted to the self-starter do it now, for he made a long list long-distance telephone call to one of the three men to whom he was introduced by his banker. He had helped them, and perhaps they could give him the right advice, for they knew more about financing than he. Because they had invested in another cosmetic company, perhaps they would invest in his. They did. And because these men were experienced in investing, they employed a successful investment formula, which made it necessary for Leonard to agree to A. Consolidate all his operations, B. Devote his entire efforts to one corporation, and C. Have the corporation pay back the loan on quarterly installments over a 5-year period, D. Pay at the going rate of interest on the loan, and E. Give 25% of the corporation's stock as a premium for the investment gamble. Leonard did agree. He saw the value of the use of OPM. The three men used OPM too. They borrowed the $400,000 from their banks. The missing number, how Leonard and Bernice had it. They worked long hours. They put their hearts into the business. They found it a thrilling game. It wasn't long before VO5 was being used in every part of the United States and in many foreign countries. December is usually the slowest month of the year for the cosmetic manufacturer. But in December, a year and a half after Leonard and Bernice took over the management of VO5 and another product which was acquired, Rinse-Away, the factory had a dollar volume of more than $870,000. That was as much as VO5 and Rinse-Away together had received during their past years under previous management. And Bernice and Leonard found the missing number. With it, they found the combination to acquire wealth, for it was only 3 years after the acquisition of VO5 that their equities in their company were valued in excess of $1 million. Now, the numbers in Leonard Lavin's combination for success were 1. A product or service that repeats. 2. A company that is making money with an exclusive product or trade name, but which has leveled off. 3. A good experienced production manager who operates the factory with maximum efficiency. 4. A successful, experienced sales manager who can constantly increase his sales at a profit to the company by adhering to a successful sales formula and simultaneously seeking better sales methods. 5. A good administrator with PMA. 6. An expert accountant who understands cost accounting and income tax law. 7. A good lawyer with common sense and PMA who gets things done. And 8. Sufficient working capital or credit to operate the business and expand it at the right time. You too can use OPM for business. For business, it's quite simple. It's other people's money. Now, if you choose to learn the principles in this chapter, as well as those in Chapter 12, entitled Attract, Don't Repel Wealth, you, like Leonard and Bernice Lavin, can find the missing numbers and unlock the door to riches for yourself. But to be healthy and happy, you must find satisfaction in your job. When you read the next chapter, you will learn how. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. This is going to be an interesting chapter to relate to mental health, because this one is one of the chapters in the book that is very specifically about business. And, you know, he talks about being able to borrow, or being willing to borrow, and being smart about borrowing things, money from other people, right? I think that's one of his points, and the other major point is, I think, just sort of reaffirming a previous point of, you know, always looking or behaving as if there will always be a way to accomplish your goal, right? And I think those two, I can relate to mental health just in the terms of, you know, if you are struggling with a certain mental health, right? A mental health issue or mental illness or whatever, right? If you're struggling with anything like that, you know, I suppose we could say, you know, going to see a therapist, for example, is a way of investing your money in a way that's going to give you a return, right? Now, you may not get money back from that directly, but in a way, you know, seeing a therapist and being able to process the things that you're going through that are impacting your life, those you will get in return of in a way of both of, you know, an improved mental health and improved energy and improved lifestyle in general, which may in turn lead to more motivation, more hope, more determination, things like that, which could also lead, to this idea, or to this maybe an increase of wealth, whether it's monetary or wealth in terms of happiness, wealth in terms of joy, wealth in terms of goodness, feeling like you have a good life. That is the best way I can relate it. Like I said, it's a little tough because this chapter is specifically about business, but again, I can relate that just to the idea of investing and borrowing time and money into yourself, right? And I think, he mentions the point of like, sometimes borrowing can be bad, or credit can be bad, if you don't have the right, attitude about it. And, if I'm going to relate that to mental health, and this happens very rarely, but, it is occasional where, a client will come in and they will say, you know what, I'm going to pay X amount of money to see this therapist for an hour, but, I am going to approach the sessions, I'm going to approach therapy as if, the therapist is responsible for fixing everything, right? I'm doing my part by showing up and answering questions, but I'm not going to go home and do any of the things that I'm suggested to do to improve my life at home, right? That's the best way I can relate, having bad credit, or having, a negative PMA in terms of borrowing, right? And those are things obviously you want to look out for, right? You want to stay away from those, because then at a certain point, even on a monetary level, it becomes a waste of money, right? Therapy will always be helpful, but it is always the most helpful for the people who come in expecting to, have that determination, that do it now kind of idea of, okay, you know what, you're the expert, I'm going to take your advice, I'm going to try and apply it to myself. If it works, great, I'm going to keep applying to myself. If not, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you about it so that we can brainstorm and figure out why, and so, that's something that I think even without a therapist, you can just relate it to, investing your time into things that are good for your mental health, right? Investing your time into things that are good for, your self-care, good for your own energy, your restorativeness, after a long week of work, finding something to do that is truly good for your brain, truly good for your soul, something that sort of recenters you, right? And that's what we're talking about here, I think, in terms of investment, right? And I could give you my thoughts on, the more business side of it. I'm not as much of a business mind myself. So this is all new to me. But the idea makes sense, right? The idea to me of, first of all, like, building up such a reputation for yourself, or in terms of mental health, building up a habit of being somebody who other people can trust to, when it comes to an investment in time, right? And this is important too in social ways, right? Where, you want to be the kind of person that other people know, if I invest in this person or in a relationship with this person, I am going to benefit, right? As much as they benefit from being with me, right? And so, it's similar to that too, when we're talking about, trying to encourage someone to, cultivate more relationships, right? To improve their own personal life. It's always going to be a reciprocal thing. Otherwise, it's not a relationship, right? And so if it's going to be a reciprocal kind of thing, there's got to be equal work on my part as your part, right? If you want to find people who are worth investing in, you also have to be yourself someone worth investing in, right? And that is, again, where we come back to either the idea of therapy or the idea of, your own self-study, which you could do. It's a lot easier to have a therapist, to just have somebody objective and let you know, here's where we tweak this and here's what needs to be, altered or whatever. But, But like I said, that's where it comes down to doing that self-work, right? Having those principles, having those morals, having those ideas. I think that's generally what I can come up with, for that chapter. I don't have a lot to say on it, but I would love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, what you guys think about all this. Comments, questions, recommendations, leave those in the comments. Thank you for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.